Travel and Things in association with Sun Destinations, iconic destinations with amazing experiences, presents In Conversation With. I'm your host, David Batsoffen, and I'm joined in part two of a four-parter series by Gary Friedman. And we're talking about his On the Road Again in Oz, in Van-Nilla. Gary, hello and welcome to episode two. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
where do we find ourselves in episode two?
Well, we haven't quite got to Uluru yet, but
Right.
we're on our way up. We've just traveling north to Marla in
Mhm.
South Australia,
Right.
and I'm trying to show on the map where
That
I
that
am.
map in episode one didn't quite work, Gary. So don't stress too much
Oh,
about it. It was too tiny, and we ended up in a different time zone.
would you like me to get a physical map and show on the map?
No, don't worry about it. It's
No.
all
Anyway, Marla is 970 kilometers northwest of Adelaide.
right.
And I don't know if you know where Adelaide is, but it's if you look on the map, it's on the west. It's not as west as Western Australia, but if you're looking at the southern part of Australia, it's slightly to the left.
All right.
In other words, it's west of Melbourne, far
Okay.
west. But we've still got 402 kilometers before we enter the Northern Territory. And the picture you're looking at is Uluru in the Northern Territory. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of driving and a lot of nothingness and a lot of meditation. And
Just on that note, while you were driving, I mean, you're alone in the vehicle. Did you listen to any motivational tapes or did you listen to music? And if so, what did you choose?
good question. I was listening a lot to my podcasts, but also to some lectures
Okay.
because it was at the time of the Jewish New Year coming up very soon,
Mhm.
and I wanted to hear some interesting lectures or shiurim about the spirituality of the time and link that to the places where I was traveling. So it was very fascinating. The only problem is we are driving up the center of Australia,
Right.
and unless you have satellite, which I didn't buy. Anyway, the big satellite dish you can't really set up on top of the van, but
Mhm.
I had a Telstra service, and that is probably the only service which works up there. However, there are hours and hours of driving where you have no internet, Wi-Fi, nothing. In fact, you don't even have the ability to make telephone calls. So,
This was this not worrisome to you though? If you were to get
no,
stuck or something had to happen to you?
I before I left, it was a little bit of a concern
Mhm.
because I never knew what to expect. I
Right.
never knew what I'm going to find out there. All these fierce creatures by night and these long, hot roads by day. But I soon found out that people were very friendly.
Right.
I did buy two UHF radios, which I used a lot while driving, especially to talk to the truckies,
Mhm.
because everybody is sharing this very narrow bitumen road. And as I said before, I couldn't really go off road because
Yeah.
my vehicle is not a four-wheel drive.
You could
So
have turned it into one, or tried to and see what happens.
Yeah, I've tried that and I did get stuck 3 times last year. So no, no.
I take it then because of the trucks that are driving those roads, you didn't drive at night. Um,
Oh, I would not drive at night, full stop. Firstly, uh, in early morning and very late afternoon as the sun's going down. Hang on, you're jumping ahead of yourself. Um,
I'll get through.
this is me driving.
I was going to say that's
Later,
exactly
later,
why I've
later.
come to this slide. This
Okay.
is you. You've lost your van. You've now got a Segway.
No, 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 not quite. The problem is it's very dangerous because wild animals cross the
Yeah,
road, kangaroos or even cows and stuff, because there are no fences, there are no farms, so the animals up there are all wild.
mm.
So it can be very tricky. If you hit a large animal, it can destroy your vehicle.
It
But
can
I don't,
indeed.
I don't, I don't like driving distance at night anyway. My
Yeah,
eyes are not that good that you can drive at night and see, especially when the ongoing traffic is shining lights into your
yeah.
eyes.
I'm with you
Anyway,
on that
also,
one.
I was talking about using these radios to communicate. It is reassuring,
Mm.
and it does give you a sense of calm that you can speak to people passing. Now, not all the cars have radios for sure,
Yeah.
but the big trucks, which are called road trains in
Mm.
Australia, because they can sometimes have um, five compartments. They are massive,
Yeah.
and they come across toward you shaking from side to side. So it's quite a daunting experience.
I should imagine so. I know I got stuck between two 18-wheelers on a highway in America. And I was in an estate vehicle. I mean, I was in a biggish vehicle, but it scared the hell out of me. It really did. All of a
Yes.
sudden, there was no sun and one on either side. And they sat there as if to say, let's see how long this guy lasts between us. And I'm sure
Well,
you
then
had similar situations.
if that happens, you do communicate and talk to them and say,
Yeah.
e- either please let me overtake you. Is it safe?
Mhm.
Because you can't see
You're right.
ahead of you all the time. Or alternatively, you say, can I pull back and let you overtake me?
Yeah. Fair enough. So talking
And
about overtaking, yeah.
normally they're very friendly and very nice, except one experience where the guy was really rude.
Well, maybe he'd had a bad day. He'd seen one van too many on his route that particular day. But now
But not
talking
one.
about vehicles, I take it this is still at Uluru, looking at in the far distance. I take it
Well,
that's what I'm looking at. But you on a
this,
Segway.
that's me on a Segway. I booked and did a uh, a early morning sunrise tour at Uluru, which has been called Ayers Rock,
Mhm.
and it's a huge monolith in the Uluru Kata Chuta National Park. This is the red center of Australia.
Yeah.
This is the spiritual place of Australia. And we did this tour. We did not go all the way around the monolith or
Mhm.
the rock. It's just huge. It's massive. It's what can I compare it to? It's not as tall as Table Mountain, but it's as imposing and as huge, and it's red and it's there. It's just in the middle of nowhere. You see this huge structure just growing up before your eyes. Very imposing.
And it
That's
seems
what
to
it
be, yeah, it seems to be all alone in the landscape. It's not part of a mountain range. It's just, as you
it's
say, it's almost
it's
as if
all
it come out of the earth and is just sitting there.
it came out of the earth and it's just been sitting there for thousands and thousands, if not millions of years. But this tour was very special,
Mm,
incredibly special, because we got to drive around on the Segway, a whole bunch of people, and
mm,
it morning, I'm wearing my thick jacket. It was very, very cold in the early morning. It does warm up, but the temperatures vary vastly, and this is not in winter.
It's like a desert outside Uppington. Just a quick question. Talking about clothing, Gary, how much did you take with you? I mean, where did you do laundry?
Mostly in campsites when I used campsites. A lot
Okay.
of the time I slept rough on the side of the road or in places which are truck stops, or there's all sorts of places you can find. So, sorry, what was the question? Where did I do laundry?
You've
They've
answered the
got
question.
machine.
I've thrown
Yeah.
you by putting this slide up. This fascinated me. I mean, this is beautiful.
This is all part of this big, huge structure, Uluru.
Really?
Yeah, you can't see it from far away, but when you come close up, you can
Mm.
see it's all composed of rock. It's one massive rock, but it's all intertwined with smaller rocks climbing up it. It's difficult to describe, but it's so old and so powerful. When you actually touch the rock, you can feel it's palpable, the spiritual energy that just comes out of this place. It
You've
is
you've
the
actually
most.
you've actually answered my next question, which was going to be what was the feeling while you were there? Does the ground vibrate? And you've sort of answered that question by telling me that if you do touch it, there is an energy exchange almost. Did you come away? What was the emotion, the overriding emotion when you came away from Uluru?
It was just overwhelming. It was so intense, the experience. It was something. Uluru, this rock, is one of the spiritual chakras of the world. I don't know if you know much about this, but there
Mm.
are certain places which have an energy which is so powerful that you can even feel it, not even touching it, just
Yeah.
go, going close. This one, the wall in Jerusalem, the Kotel, and there are many around the world, and I haven't felt it as powerful as this before. And the ability to get off your Segway and you stop and park it, and then you go in and start exploring a little bit. You cannot climb up to the top of Uluru like you used to be able to. And I'm
Yeah.
very, very glad. It was totally daunting to look up and see the climb. A lot of people did it, and
Mm.
a lot of people fell down and got killed or injured very badly. But it's a spiritual place. People should not even go there in their mind. It's.
Okay. So you go
But I
there with
found
respect and deference.
absolutely,
Yeah.
it's an ancient, indigenous, sacred space, and the amount of cave paintings, rock art you can find inside some of these caves,
Now,
it's just astonishing.
now does the rock art there tie up with perhaps the rock art that we have in South Africa? Are there similarities? Because we say that right in the beginning of the formation of the world or of Earth, all the continents were joined, and then at a particular point, they all split up and went to where they find themselves currently. And there have been animals or inverts found in places that they shouldn't be found unless that continent was joined, and it's normally to Africa. Everything seems to have originated here and then radiated outwards.
Well, one thing I can tell you for certain, that this rock, Uluru, this
Mhm.
huge monolith, was completely submerged by the ocean.
Wow. Okay.
And there are fish skeletons and all sorts of things embedded in the rock. And we're talking thousands, if not millions of years ago. And
Okay.
I want to just give an analogy of what you're asking me.
Mhm.
These places all linked. People often ask me, where did puppetry, the art of puppetry, begin?
Right.
And the answer is very similar to this, because the shamanistic tradition, the belief in something more powerful than ourselves, goes across the globe. And the answer is, it began in many, many places simultaneously. As soon as man found that they were just mere mortals and there was something more powerful and profound, they started to manipulate objects, started to play with with creatures they had carved,
Mm.
just to represent the so-called gods or what they were imbibing.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say here, that very many parallels between this and between African stories, indigenous Australian, African, and various others around the world, go back to the same source.
Okay. Now, where are we going? Okay, so Alice Springs. I know that in episode one, Alice Springs came up on a signboard, and I think it was further away than this. Um,
A lot further away.
Tennant Creek and Devil's Marbles Hotel, were either of them on your travels, or do any of these three feature
All of them.
in later episodes?
All of them coming up right now. So stay
Okay.
tuned. The
And
next the next stop was called
yeah.
Ghan. Sorry, this slide was taken out. I'm not sure how it's back, but okay.
Ah.
So um, Alice Springs is our next stop, and it's
Mm.
on the Tropic of Capricorn,
Okay.
which means it's kind of Mozambique, if you're comparing it to Africa where it is,
Mm.
maybe the northern part of South Africa as well. But before Alice Springs and before Uluru, I got to Ghan, which is 1,470 kilometers south of Darwin. And that's the turn off point. Because to
Okay.
get to Uluru, you got to branch off to the left, or you got to go west. And that's a long, long way. It's probably about 5 or at least 600 kilometers before you get there. And then after you've been in Uluru, you got to come all the way
All the way
back
back. Yeah.
to the highway and get back to Ghan before you can proceed up to Alice Springs.
But what
So
are these things, Gary?
what are those things?
Yeah.
Those are sculptures which are of lizard type creatures
Ah, okay.
being portrayed. It's a metaphor of the human being in the
Fair.
animal form.
This is what I imagine that you find lots of scattered throughout Australia.
That's
And
true.
I suppose they're car aficionados who will look at this and go, damn, if only I was there, loaded on a flatbed truck, take it home, and 10 years later, I've got a brand new vehicle. Or 20 years
Not
later,
not
or I'll just toss it
not
back
quite.
in.
There was in there were a few museums of ancient cars.
Mm,
One which my kids went to was in Pine Creek. We'll get to Pine Creek. It's a main stop just before you get up to Darwin,
mm.
and we met an extraordinary man there who was carrying a snake and a blue tongue lizard. We have a blue tongue lizard here too.
Right.
It's incredible creatures you find here.
Mm. They
So
do.
where are we now? We've got Alice Springs is a
Mm,
big hub of mostly Aboriginal people living. And it's unfortunately, there's been a lot of crime there. and there's a problem with alcohol, like there
Right.
are in so many indigenous communities throughout the world. We
Yeah.
had the same in Canada. We had the same in so many places where we went.
Mm.
So what they've done is Alice Springs is a little bit like South Africa in some ways
Right.
because the houses are all gated. Um, Although it's illegal in Australia to have anything like an electric fence or anything that can harm people,
Mm.
which is
Like a
quite interesting.
like a Belgian Malinois or a German Shepherd that can eat you. Start importing
I
boer
guess
bulls into Australia.
no, don't mention boer bulls because that brings back too many difficult memories.
All right, let's
When,
leave that alone. Where are we in
but
this particular picture? Because this looks
this
like it
this
could
is
be the Eastern Free State.
this is it's called Karla Karla or Devil's Marbles, and
Ah,
it's a conservation reserve just north of Wilora.
mm,
And now we've already traveled north from Alice Springs. Wilora is 250 kilometers north, and this is even further, slightly further north. And this is before we get to Tennant Creek. So this area here was covered by these amazing rocks, but also, not only that, all the way there were tons of these um, creatures standing in the road. I call them creatures because I'm doing a project about them now.
I know what you're talking about, and it's unfortunately
They
a couple of slides away, I seem to remember.
okay. We'll get to that. They are these huge sculptures made by termites. It's called
Mhm.
termite mounds, but I call them creatures. But we'll
We'll
talk
get
about
there.
that a little bit
Yeah.
more. This is just after Tennant Creek. Tennant
Mm.
Creek is the next big town. This is called Daly Waters. And I stayed here. They've got a little campsite here. It's an ancient town kind of left in ruin, which is totally fascinating. It's all a kind of museum now.
Mm.
And
Is this
Daly Water,
a working petrol station though?
well, the one pump does work, although
Okay.
the prices are outlandish. You wouldn't want to fill up there. I think the diesel was $3.50 a liter, whereas whereas everywhere else it was closer to $2 a liter.
It's
I'm
called
talking
supply
about in
and
the Northern Territory. Here in Melbourne, it's closer to
I was going to say it's
1.70,
called
80.
supply and demand, Gary. And they know it. You know, it's as simple as that. You need it, they've got it. You have to pay for it.
Well, this is in the middle of nowhere, so
Yeah.
you have to transport the stuff. So there was a big, huge campsite there,
Mm.
and a very famous pub, um, Daly Waters, and it's also 620 kilometers south of Darwin. You've just come into Darwin already, even though I'm not there yet. This is a
Catch up.
this is I did want to take you to Mataranka and Catherine and Pine Creek and Humpty Doo before we get there. But carry on.
Humpty Doo?
Humpty Doo.
What sort of a name of a town is that?
It's a place which is just outside 40 kilometers south of Darwin. It's right on the border of the Lichtfield National Park. There are two
Mm.
main parks. We're going to talk about these more once my family comes, and I'll tell you all the places I took them.
Right.
But Humpty Doo has a population of 4,000 people. It's a very small
Okay.
little town just south, and it's the border of the Lichtfield Park. And the Lichfield Park is on the left or the west,
Mm.
while Kakadu is the other one on the right. And Kakadu goes all the way into Arnhem Land. So it's massive, and it's really I wish I could show you on the map, but it's very, very large and very interesting because you have to have a four-wheel drive to see most of it. The
Okay.
roads are very limited, the bitumen roads I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Where is this image now?
That is inside Darwin. It's
Okay.
very, very close, maybe 1 kilometer from where we stayed. And this is the sunsets there are out of this world, as you can see.
Mm.
And the rock formations go on forever right into the sea. The problem is you cannot swim here because there are crocodiles in the sea.
You see, your
There are
animals
two.
on land and in the ocean. They don't worry where you are. They will find you and eat you.
That that with their sharks as well, but there are two different types of crocodiles in
Yeah.
Australia. You get the freshies,
Mm.
it's a freshwater one, and the salties, which are the aggressive,
Yeah.
huge crocodiles which you find in the salt water. So in the sea, mostly you can find the salties.
And they
And
are huge.
this is all over the Northern Territory and also in Queensland.
Okay. Now you want to take a chance and hop in water. Do you have to do some sort of ritual like crocodiles be gone before you get into the water so
No,
they don't eat
no,
you?
because they have a sign. It says, "Beware the freshies." So
Okay.
they're only freshwater crocodiles. This was an area before Darwin called Mataranka, which is
Okay.
420 kilometers southeast of Darwin,
Hmm.
or 170 kilometers south of Catherine. We haven't quite got there. We've been jumping a bit. But there are two natural springs, warm springs in Mataranka. This one is called Bitter Springs, and it's
Okay.
really, really the most beautiful place to be, to swim, to relax. And I never saw any crocodiles. Apparently, the freshies are much further down
I
the
have to
stream.
I have to ask you, you're in the middle of nowhere, right? In a hot spring pool. Who took this
Yeah.
photograph, Gary?
One of the other tourists did, and there were a few people there. It is a kind of tourist resort, so there are people around. You're not always on your own.
Okay. This is what you were talking about earlier, these termite
The
mounds that look like
the
skulls.
termite mounds,
Yeah.
yes, I call them my creatures because these are all over
Mm.
the Northern Territory and also the northern part of Queensland. Now, they are the most fascinating things, creatures, mounds that I've ever seen in my life because they're everywhere, all along the National Highway. So
Right.
I was, being a puppeteer, I was so inspired by these creatures that I've decided to do a project. I'm organizing a workshop in Darwin
Mm.
and we're going to explore them. I took tons and tons of photographs
Oh,
because
wow.
they come in all different colors
Shapes and
and sizes
sizes.
and shapes. Some of them are magnetic, which means they build their mounds in straight lines from north to south, using
Okay.
the sun to warm their environment and also to cool it, so to
Yeah.
regulate the temperature inside. And oh, you've gone back into Darwin.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't know.
This is the order that you sent me the pictures in. And I
Okay, I
just want
must
to
I
get through
must have
them
been
quickly
very
because we're
tired.
running out of time.
That's
Um,
okay.
so this is another one of the sunsets, obviously from a similar position that the first one was from.
Correct. Yes, this
Yeah.
is in Darwin. In Darwin.
Have you started working on that termite project, or is this something that's going to come up in 2025, perhaps?
It's going to come up in 2025, but I have started. I'm busy finishing the proposal today, which I'll send to the government in the Northern Territory and to the Screen Northern Territory, which is like a film organization. Oh dear.
No, no, no.
Okay.
That that
So
that just tells me it was the the last of the slides so I can get back to a full screen with you, and we can have a chat for the last few minutes that we have in episode 2.
So what I'm doing,
hang on one sec. To let people know, this is episode 2 of 4 episodes. Episode 1 has already been recorded. That will go out in this. It has been out on the 4th of December. This will go out on the 11th of December. Now, where Gary has wandered off to, I have no idea. Oh, he's back. Don't forget
I went to answer
Mhm.
the question of what am I trying to do. I'm trying to animate these creatures. So
Okay.
I'm giving them eyes, and I'm going to animate them in their landscape, and let them be able to move. Obviously, this is still being developed, but this
Yeah.
is a termite mound that's got, in my imagination, the father, the mother, and the child. And I'm cutting it out so that I can move the parts and animate it. And that's what's so fascinating, is when you're looking at these creatures and you get out of your vehicle
Mhm.
and go into this world. It's like being in Star Wars, and that's what I'm using on the proposal. I'm calling it a world like Star Wars.
Do you know that if I know from South African termite mounds, if you get there at the right time of day, and it's normally in the early morning, you can see steam coming out of the top of the termite mound as they air condition inside. I mean, termites are fascinating creatures. People tend to
Yeah.
ignore them. You drive past the termite mound, you don't know whether it's active or not. But an active termite mound, if you just sit quietly and watch, is a hive of activity. It really and truly is. And what they get up to inside is fascinating.
Well, some of these termite mounds are hundreds, if not more, years
Mhm.
old.
Right.
And you don't see the termites, well, especially not during the daytime.
Yeah.
And but the images that you get, and the world around, the trees, the grass, or the desert, a lot of them were on fire as well. As I was
Mhm.
driving, there were fires in the bush, and the police said, we can't control that. It just has to take its effect. So some of the termite mounds were surrounded, they were burnt, and they were surrounded by fire.
Wow.
It's another universe. And the most profound thought I had while traveling is, how small and insignificant are we,
Mm.
just mere humans? We inhabit this planet, but we are such a small part of the planet.
Yeah.
And there's so many creatures which we're not related to, which we don't have any communication with, on the same space, on the same planet.
Yeah.
Think of the animals and the insects and the trees and the mushrooms or fungi,
Yeah. Listen,
and
Gary,
they
if
are
you
all
think about it,
connected.
if you think about it, we're inconsequential here. We really, if all of us, all 7 billion of us, disappeared tomorrow in one, giant meteorite, and just the humans were affected, the animal kingdom would survive without us. They wouldn't even miss us for a single day. Maybe domestic pets, yes, but the wild animals and the insects would just keep on going. We're coming to
But
the end of episode. Yeah.
they'd have food for a week or two, wouldn't they?
For a lot longer than that, 7 billion of us. We're coming to the end of episode 2. I've been talking to Gary Friedman. We've been talking about his trip around Australia. There's still episode 3 and 4 to come. Looking forward to chatting to you about those. Gary, once again, thanks for joining me on In Conversation With.
Thank you. See you next time.